Let me come to you, Joel. Are you there? Joel, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. I'm sure that you heard Kimenyi's comments regarding the spoiled ballot papers. He seems to be blaming the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission of Kenya. Do you really think that it is the IEBC that should take the sole responsibility for that? Or should we perhaps even be looking at the Ministry of Information? Should we be looking at civil society and a lot of other stakeholders here, really, in terms of civic education or the lack of it?
Well, I think civil society certainly bears some responsibility here, particularly because there were a number of civil society organizations that received substantial support from the international donor community, as they have in the past. And yet the effort wasn't very robust. Indeed, one could argue that it was better the last time around under the old ECK, when the Institute for Education and Democracy, for example, partnered with the then commission to do a lot of voter education. But I think it's important to remember that this is a much more complicated election. Kenyans are voting for 6 offices this time, and unfortunately, in order to deal with that situation and simplify the process, the IEBC put out one fire and got itself into another. For example, rather than use a single ballot that would have the candidates for all 6 offices, they simplified the procedure because after tests they realized that that procedure wouldn't work, and they went to a system of 6 separate ballots and 6 separate ballot boxes. And that's where some of these spoiled ballots are coming from. People voters putting the wrong ballot in the wrong box. It also slowed down the process, and then by slowing down the process, the IBC countered by expanding the number of polling stations. The expansion of the number of polling stations therefore complicates the results reporting, and that, of course, is broken down, and it also stretches the security apparatus to the limit. So the very fact that you had 6 offices created immense challenges that weren't there before, and while the IBC has succeeded in some ways, they have indeed failed in others. I think we also, though, should give credit where it's due. The biometric voter registration system failed at about 25% of the polling places, and yet the presiding officers, to the extent that I'm getting information from the field, responded almost heroically in terms of shifting rather seamlessly to the paper register. A lot of improvisation on the ground. The real tragedy here, quite frankly, is that at the polling station level, the process went very well, as it did the last time. The problem, yet again, has been in the results transmission and the reporting to the Kenyan public.
So if I hear you correctly, Joel, then what you are saying is perhaps that the 6-piece type of election was not a good idea after all.
No, I'm not saying that, because you have 6 offices to be elected, and thus you had separate elections for the county level positions, which would, of course, double the cost. I mean, you see, there are a whole series of constraints here. You have to deal with the initial fact that under the new constitution, 6 different offices were to be elected, and then the question is how you go from there. They came up with what seemed like a good system, but the real problem here, if you want to lay blame, goes all the way back to last July and August, when the IEBC delayed on the procurement issue of the biometric voter registration equipment. Then they wisely wanted to abandon that equipment and go to an optical scanning alternative methodology. I can't get into the technical weeds here, but the bottom line is they were advised to change the methodology, speed up the process, and instead they stuck with the BVR. They basically wasted the entire second half of 2012, and then they were in a race for their lives in January and February to put out all the other aspects of the system into place, and they basically just ran out of time.
What do we learn from the fact that you have close to 400,000 spoiled ballot papers, and that number actually happens to be greater than the number of the 6 other presidential candidates.
What to make of it? What we've been discussing, and clearly the voters were confused. One thing we do not know at this point is the extent to which a spoiled ballot is one that was mismarked, or a spoiled ballot is one that was put in the wrong box. Those are really 2 different things, and my guess is that it's going to be more of the latter than the former, but that in turn raises the very contentious issue about how to interpret the clause of the Constitution for the presidential race, which clearly states that the winner must receive 50% plus 1 of all votes cast. Well, cast for what? If it went in the wrong box, is that presidential ballot retrieved? And then is it recounted and given to one of the candidates, or is it continued to be marked as spoiled but added into the total, which could affect which will drive down the percentage of all the candidates because it increases the number by which you're dividing the vote of each of the individual candidates, and all this is going to end up in the courts and petitions. You can be sure.
I see.